if there's ever a time where we needed to pull together as believers of Christ and unite and try to strengthen and make the world a better place, it's now.
Mm-hmm. And that sounds like he's preaching our message.
There's one body, one church, one spirit, one hope. The realities of the faith, the realities that unify us are already there.
Christ praying for unity. What should we be praying for? I mean, it's the one prayer request of Jesus. Think about it. In the Bible, that we actually have a say in whether or not it comes to fruition or not.
I think in what God has done in you guys in this podcast and the multitude of folks that you're reaching, the diversity, whatever God intended when you started this, He's able to bring it to completion.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Whole Church Podcast, your favorite church unity podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Joshua Noel, here with the other co-host, TJ Tiberius Von Blackwell.
Hey, welcome.
And today we are here with another special guest, Dave Ebert. Is it Ebert or Ebert?
Ebert.
I really should have asked you that before we started, but here we are.
That's okay. Ebert, kind of like the film critic, just without the money and notoriety.
Nice. All right. And we're going to be talking to Dave about improv humor and his podcast, Gifts for Glory. Really excited to get into that. But before we do, we always like to start with a silly question. So, Dave, we'll answer this first, give you time to think about it. Okay. And this is just a real simple one or the other kind of question. Who would win in a fight, the tortoise or the hare? TJ?
Yeah, so there are a lot of factors here. There are multiple species of hares and tortoises. But I think for the most part, the tortoise is going to win because they have to fight each other. They can't just run away. And a hare gets too close to a tortoise, they can bite surprisingly fast. And I don't think a hare can do any real damage to most tortoises. So,
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, even though the hare is really fast and like speed great in a fight, that shell's got to be better. Like just having a plate of armor has got to help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, I'm going tortoise too. All right, Dave.
I'm going the same thing. You got the speed of the tortoise, or excuse me, the speed of the hare, but there's not a lot of power there. And the shell is going to give the tortoise the advantage. And so I'm going to go with the tortoise for the very same reason. He's got a layer of protection. And I would compare it to like somebody like the Ultimate Warrior. If he actually got in a real fight, he would get taken out. Because he's so amped up and so, running everywhere with his, speed that it'd just take one pump in a real fight and he'd be down.
Yeah.
So tortoise all the way.
Yeah. Ultimate Warrior is a big guy, but someone who knows how to fight, that's,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that might be one of the very few times we've had a silly question with a unanimous answer.
Yeah. Well, I'm really hoping that when we post it to everybody on our Facebook and Instagram, that someone says hare and gives a good explanation. Even if I disagree with them, just for the sake of I just want to see someone's thought process behind that.
Right.
It'll be fun.
But on to the real show. So Dave,
Yes.
glad you're here. Thank you for your time. One thing we believe, thank you. One thing we believe it is extremely useful for church unity is to hear one another's stories. Would you mind giving us a snapshot of your testimony?
Sure, absolutely. You touched on it a minute ago in the introduction that I do improv. And most of my life, I used comedy as a way to kind of hide who I was because I was battling deep depression and was wrestling with the thought of suicide. And so as a way to distract and deflect so people couldn't see that, I would, make constant jokes, find ways to create moments of laughter because I felt not only could I hide kind of where I was at mentally and emotionally and spiritually, I could also contribute to the world by making people's lives a little bit better because if they were laughing, then they weren't feeling the kind of the darkness and the pain that I was feeling. So that actually is why I got into comedy at first was to be a light, even though I wasn't following Jesus and I wasn't really serving the Lord at that point. I was still trying to make a positive impact. And so all those years that I battled depression and thoughts of suicide, God was actually allowing me to develop a skill set and a passion that that He would later redeem and allow me to use as a way to serve others. But instead of serving others as a way to hide, it was now a way to reveal who He is. And so in 2013, when I finally realized that I've been running from God for way too long, I started to pursue Him, and He led me from West Virginia to the Chicagoland area to use comedy and improv as a way to really just point people to the foot of the cross. And that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years.
It's always nice to hear someone that got out of West Virginia.
That was your takeaway, TJ?
That was my takeaway of the last few seconds.
Oh, man.
And I've got a lot of great friends, and West Virginia definitely has a lot of positives and good things. But
winter place.
Yeah, exactly. The thing was, it wasn't for me. So whenever I tell my testimony, I don't want anyone to really think that I left West Virginia with negative feelings or whatever. It was just where God wanted me to move was back to where I was born, and it was in Chicagoland.
Right.
Nice. Yeah. It's amazing how many times we discover that the funny people around us are actually the ones going through the most, and that's it's a very similar sounding story, except for you got out of that and into Christ, which is hopefully the goal for everybody dealing with something similar to that. We need more Christian funny people. I'm sure that's a real professional term, Christian funny people. So you didn't mention the church the church you're at now, but we are curious about it. Could you tell us something unique about the church you attend, or?
The church I currently attend is called Thrive Church. It's based in Lockport, Illinois. And we're celebrating our 5th year as a church coming up in September. The thing that makes it unique is in its entire 5 years, they have not had their own building. They're a church plant that is a portable church. And in all that time, they have not had their own property. And they've actually pretty much had to move locations based on the season. In fact, in the last year and a half since the pandemic and the shutdowns and everything, Thrive has met in 12 different locations since the start of the pandemic.
Man.
So that makes it unique. And it's a God thing, too. It's literally the Israelites walking in the wilderness, following the pillar of fire and the cloud, looking for the next location to set up camp. That's what Thrive has been doing. And every location that they've been to, they've picked up another family or picked up new membership. So not only are we mobile, we're growing and we're mobile. So it's really unique, really exciting, and it's really cool to see how God works even in the most uncertain of circumstances. Because when you're a church that's portable and you spend the first 3 to 4 years reliant on the schools to rent you their gym or their auditorium, and now you take all schools off the table because of the pandemic, the fact that they're able to not only survive but thrive, which is the name, it's really very unique, and it shows that the leadership of the church is really pursuing the leadership of the Holy Spirit in everything that we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, just a couple questions with that. One's real simple, because I think my brain is just doing the wrong thing, because sometimes it does that. You say portable church. Is it still like staying within the same city, or is it like?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
For the most part, in the Chicagoland area, all the suburbs tend to kind of run into each other. The border lines are kind of blurred, but Lockport has been the primary home. We've met in nearby suburbs that are 5 to 10 minutes away, but for the most part, 99% of the meetings have been in Lockport. We're just portable because we have set up and tear down each Sunday, setting up the stage, the sound system, the pipe and drape, so it doesn't look like we're just meeting in the gym and those kind of things. So that's where portable means. We're not like a big tent revival just going around the world setting it up like Steve Martin in that movie Leap of Faith. I don't know if you've seen that.
Right.
But now we're based in one of the suburbs. It's just that we have to pack up pretty much every week. Sometimes we're lucky; we'll have a few weeks where we can leave some things up. But for the most part, it's a complete setup and tear down, like we're a concert on tour.
Nice. And is that a non-denominational church, or what kind of church is that?
We're part of the Fellowship of the Assemblies of God. The Assemblies of God don't define ourselves as a denomination, but it's just a fellowship of like-minded churches and congregations. Most would consider it a denomination, but
is Assemblies of God?
AG.
Is it separate from the Pentecostal Assemblies of God, or is it?
The AG is Pentecostal, so I think they're all within the same umbrella.
Okay,
cool.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah, that's when I was in Florida for 5 years growing up, I went to Assemblies of God Church, so we have some ties there. Me and TJ are Church of God of Prophecy, so similar, but not. Yeah.
So, could you tell us about your podcast, Gifts for Glory?
I could, but then I'd have to end the call. I'm kidding. So Gifts for Glory, it's a weekly show that brings on guests who are using their gifts, their talents, their passions, and even just using their experiences in a way to glorify God, whether they're doing actual ministry or they're just doing something that betters people's lives. They're using what God has either brought them through or God has gifted them with as a way to make a difference for God's kingdom, for his people, and for people that should be on a pathway to knowing God. We've had comedians, actors, actresses. Even had a friend that she runs a cosmetic, a permanent cosmetic business in Little Rock, Arkansas. And her primary service is to women who've survived breast cancer and kind of helping them reclaim some of the things that the cancer took away from their bodies that are typically what women identify as women with. I don't want to get too graphic, but that should give you an idea of what she does. And it's not a ministry so much as it's a business that meets a very important need. And sometimes we'll open a door for her to be able to share some of the gospel or her testimony or the why she does this business. So we just want to highlight and celebrate the different ways people serve God, to inspire other people to step into using their gifts to serve God and to serve others. And also, hopefully we'll reach some people who are not Christian, who stumble onto a topic that we're discussing and be inspired to get to know Jesus, because there is a multitude of ways to serve Jesus. There's a multitude of ways to become a Christian, and there's no two stories that are exactly alike. So we want to tell those stories.
Awesome. So how did you get started? What inspired you to start Gifts for Glory?
So when I first moved back to Chicago, I started an improv ministry because in my naivete, I thought, hey, nobody does Christian improv comedy. We're going to corner the market here. And I quickly found out that, there are some people who are Christians who do improv. In fact, we found by choosing a name that I thought was brilliant, we found that there was already a group that had that name. And they were kind of protective of their brand. So they were like, no, we're not going to let you use that name in Chicago because we don't want to get people confused. So we realized, there are people that are doing Christian improv, but most of them don't do it specifically as a ministry to reach people, to inspire people, and to bring hope and joy. So we started doing that in 2013. And from there, I wanted to do more things with using the arts to reach people. And I always find myself having a lot of opinions. Many I have to keep to myself because I try not to seem like I'm high on myself. I'm genuinely pursuing God's glory. And then I felt like God said, you've got stuff to say and you have stories you want to tell. Maybe you should do a podcast. And so I wrestled with God for a few days. Fortunately, I submitted to that idea before being swallowed by a fish. And I decided to use gifts for glory, since that's what we were all about with the Improv. The idea of using our gifts, talents, and passions for God's glory. So that's how the name came about, Gifts for Glory. And in mid 2018, I interviewed a couple of friends and just continued to let the show evolve, adding a few cool segments here and there. We do one segment called The Interrogation, where I'll ask 7 random questions that really wouldn't fit anywhere else in the interview. Usually they're softballs, but every once in a while I'll try to ask something that might be a challenge. And then we always wrap up the interview with a question asking our guest, for anybody that's listening or watching that wants to use their gifts, their talents or passions for God's glory, what is your wise counsel? And we just hear what people share. You get a lot of people that will just say, dive in, take the chance. Other people have some really deep and thoughtful ideas. And I love hearing that, because it gives just a different perspective on how being a Christian and serving God, it's not a spectator sport. It's not something where you just go and sit in a pew for an hour and a half on Sunday, because Jesus used the words follow, walk, pursue, serve. These are all action verbs. And we want to inspire people through that wise counsel to put their faith into action by doing something that God's gifted you to do.
Awesome.
Yeah. We have a similar question that we like to ask at the end. So it's nice to hear that we're not crazy. I'm glad you brought up improv. Do you think it's possible that humor can help the church maintain unity?
I believe so, especially with improv, because by and large, the funny that makes improv funny, it's not about incredible wit. It's not about incredibly creative comedy. It's actually the mutual recognition that we're all humans. We're all in this together, and we're all kind of goofy on some level. Most people laugh at improv because they either recognize something about themselves, or they'll recognize somebody that they know on stage. Like they'll recognize, oh, that's Vinny from work, or that's Sally from church. They'll recognize characteristics that are kind of universal. And then we can bond over the fact that we're all messy, broken, silly children of God. And God, just like any other father, he's up there, he's in his rocking chair, just laughing at his kids being goofy and enjoying every moment of it. And so to anybody that's ever even thought about improv, let me take the burden of the idea of having to be funny off your back. You just got to be real. And the funny is going to happen because we are funny creatures. And with that said, by recognizing through comedy, through improv, that we are all very similar. We're all designed very similar with different personalities, gifts, and talents. But at the very root of it, we're all human beings. And by recognizing that the rich churchgoer and the poor churchgoer are the same kind of human being, they just have different paths in life, that can bring unity, because you realize that they're not that different from me. I'm not necessarily a complete outcast, because I share a lot with this person that I never realized. Because when you get a room of people laughing together, you get these moments where you realize that we're more alike than we are different. Because you go into a room full of strangers and then you all laugh at the same thing. Everybody in that room is admitting a little something about themselves. And automatically there's this, at a very subconscious level, at least at the beginning, there's a new unity that's born out of those room full of strangers, because they've all found something uniquely funny, but they've done that together. So I think improv and comedy can definitely play a great role, because it unites us in the fact that we're God's created human beings.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we just wanted to tell you a few of the ways that you can support us, the Whole Church Podcast, your favorite church unity podcast.
Yeah, so you can subscribe to our show on wherever good podcasts are found. You can rate our show on Apple Podcast or Podchaser. You can sign up for our newsletter using either our website or by emailing us at thewholechurch@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can share this episode on your own social media accounts. You can donate to our Cash App using the tag down below in the show notes. Or you can sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/thewholechurch podcast.
Yeah, especially that last one.
TJ, you always say that.
Perhaps I was told to say that. However, it's especially true for Patreon. You get access to a bunch of bonus stuff we do. You support us. We have a lot of goals to reach. It's kind of a great way to support the show.
All right. Let's get back to it then.
Yeah.
And comedy, much like C.S. Lewis's storytelling does, helps you kind of peek behind the veil to see the real truth that we're kind of scared to see sometimes. So that's really cool. Which leads me to the thing I was most excited for. We wanted to see if you could work through some improv with us, do a couple exercises if you know any.
Sure. One of the funnest things that we do is, especially in the beginning when we're training people, because we do improv not only for performance, but we do it as a tool for ministry, teaching people that you do have a voice, you do have something to offer the world. We do a game that's called Rants, and for the listener, they're going to just kind of have to trust us. But since you guys can see me on, I believe you guys can still see me on your camera.
Yeah,
right?
we can.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So on Rants, I'll be the conductor, and basically I'm going to give you each a word. And based on that word, I want you to attach a memory, attach an experience, attach maybe a person in your life to that word. And when you see me hold up your number, so we'll give Joshua the number 1, just because he's on top in my screen, and then TJ, you'll be number 2. So when you see your number go up, then you'll just talk about something related to that word. And when you see your number go down, you'll pause, and the other person will continue. Now, the caveat to this is I may have both of you talking at once, but you just keep going focused on your story, whatever it may be. Does that make sense?
I don't play off DJ. We just both keep going simultaneously.
Right. It's basically just an ongoing monologue, and I'll either start or stop you. And the idea is attach something emotional, like a memory or a person that you're inspired by the word. And if you'll find an emotional connection to it, you'll find you have a lot more to say than you think you would. And it works okay virtually. It's even a lot more fun in person. So maybe someday, if you guys are ever in the Chicagoland area, we'll work on this and do it in person.
Perfect.
So again, Joshua, you'll be number 1, and TJ number 2. No preference involved, just the order on my screen. So Joshua, your word that you'll be ranting on is going to be desk. And TJ, your word is going to be pet.
Got it.
Think for a second, find something.
I'm ready.
That you can. All right, cool. So so we'll start with TJ.
So, I'm a young kid, right? I mean, still currently, I guess a lot of people would say that, but specifically I'm talking about when I was younger, and I'd never had a pet before. My parents had a dog a little bit, I was like 5, but that's not really my dog. I have no memories of that pet. We had a couple fish, it's whatever, but
Yeah, so desks. I have never really had great experiences with desks. They're really just fancy tables that seem to want to harm me for some reason. I remember in school, for some reason, I was given the small desk of my class. I think it's because I was late, because I was doing something stupid in the hallway. And it was small enough that my knees were just pressed into the wooden part, because it was one of those desks where like the chair's attached to the desk.
So,
and it just
my sister and I were like, okay, it's time for a dog. We need a dog.
What other memory I have
So
with desks?
our parents, they cave. They're like, okay, we'll get a dog.
I was moving.
It'll be fine. So we get the dog. I have no idea what breed it is. I don't think I ever knew what breed it was. But we get it, and then our mom wouldn't let it sleep inside the first night we had it.
So my father gave me his desk, and I'm moving it upstairs to my new apartment. And for some reason, instead of waiting like a normal person for friends to help you move this desk, you clearly can't move up it was like one of those small like turning stairs that someone would have yelled pivot about because, everybody watches Friends apparently. I decided I'm just going to lift this by myself.
You want the dog to sleep inside. She's a small dog. She likes to cuddle. She's probably like a year old.
We
haven't named it
all the
yet.
way up the stairs,
But my mom wouldn't let it sleep inside, so she puts it outside, and she's like,
but when I got
no, it'll be okay. We'll let her sleep in this flower pot.
It collapsed almost in half.
Naturally,
on top of
we're
me.
kids.
And
we're just going to assign the first trait we can think of to name this dog. And we settle on Bucket because flower pot just doesn't flow as well as a name for a dog. So my first dog's name was Bucket. And
all right.
Oh man, I feel like I learned some interesting things. I really kind of want to hear the rest of the
software
story.
you use to record will break up the audio into different tracks, but that would be kind of funny if you could just break the different tracks down and listen to the full.
I have them separate, so I can hear them separate, then hear them together. That was pretty amusing.
Yeah.
What is the end to the Bucket story, TJ?
That's a good.
I feel like I need to know.
That's pretty much the end. We named her Bucket. She didn't last that long, unfortunately. A couple years later.
Did anyone in your family kick the bucket?
No. At least not the physical dog.
Yeah.
But we got another dog with a less fun name. So.
Yeah, the desk that broke on me, it tore up my arm real bad. But I actually ended up learning a little bit of woodworking to put it together, so that's cool. By a little bit, I mean enough to know what wood glue is bolts can do. So that's cool. Oh, fun stuff.
That's a good exercise. I've declined to enter several improv groups, and I think I'll keep doing that. But that's a fun exercise.
And it's so cool because you tap into a lot of information that you've hidden or suppressed or just completely forgotten about, because you could talk about desks and say, some desks are made of wood, some are for children, some are for adults. Eventually you run out of stuff to say. But when you tap into something that's a memory or an emotional thing, you find you have a lot to say. And I use that when I teach improv at this organization for women who've survived sex trafficking. These women have been told to be silent, to do what they're told, blah, 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 because they're basically owned. And now that they're free, I want to use this exercise to tap into their voice, their creativity, their good memories. And this is a great exercise for that, to prove that not only are you a human being that has experiences and ideas, but you have the ability to send those out and to share those with people. And so that's definitely a fun exercise. And it's also, it forces you to think about what you're saying, because it's very easy, as Joshua is talking, for TJ to get distracted and try to respond or try to focus on that instead of what TJ is saying. So it has a lot of different muscles that you're working to play that exercise.
Yeah, thankfully, thankfully I have plenty of experience ignoring what Josh is saying. So,
oh man, that's a real powerful use with the women, like what you were saying. But yeah, no, definitely for me, being the person who is the most ADHD in the room almost all of the time, it's super challenging not to just start asking TJ about his dogs. Then like my brain goes, but what would Bucket have done? If Bucket was there when I was moving the desk, would it have gotten in my way? Like my brain's just like going all over the place with that. And I'm like, no, focus, tell the story. That was a lot of fun. So TJ already mentioned this. We always end our episodes with a question that's hopefully real practical. We just like to ask our guest, if you had to give everybody listening just a single tangible action that, like, this podcast ends, they can go do whatever this is. What's something that they can do that would help maintain unity in the church?
The first thing is make sure you're not in an echo chamber, which means find people that you disagree with, but who are also willing to accept that you don't see eye to eye with them. Have those uncomfortable conversations to understand different perspectives and see if maybe they can show you where you're wrong, or you can show them where they're wrong. And then the body of Christ, the church, can be better for it because we're growing instead of just listening to who we agree with. Because when we start listening to who we agree with and we don't hear the other side, those that we agree with start determining our theology. They start determining our faith. They start determining how we see the world because we don't hear of opposing views. And the church, as much as the rest of the United States, is just as divided because we only align ourselves with who we think we agree with, and we don't allow ourselves to truly be challenged in what we believe. We don't allow for the ironing sharpening iron. We allow for the cotton to polish our iron, not realizing that our iron is getting very dull.
Yeah. I listen to a bunch of podcasts, and most of them are Christian and, uplifting and all that stuff. But I think the one that actually challenges my actions the most, as far as like how I deal with other people, is actually I listen to an atheist podcast. I won't tell everybody what, because I don't want them judging me, and because it might not be good for everybody to listen to. But for me, it's challenging to hear what people hate about the church and make me think of, do I do that? How can I make the church better? How can I be a better representation to those who feel this way? So, yeah, that's definitely a lot of truth in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also think it's important when you listen to an atheist podcast or somebody that talks about church hurt or church abandonment, take it with a grain of salt, with some personal introspection, but also realize that many people who talk about church hurt, not all, but many, are talking from a worldly perspective and not an actual Christ or Christian failing perspective. They'll blame a person for what the Holy Spirit is trying to do in them, and they'll call that church hurt or church abandonment. So always make sure that your foundation is firm in the Word, in your pursuit of Jesus, and take those opposing values as a way to do introspection to see if you've got a few shortcomings. But also know that people will judge the church based on what the world says is love, what the world says is right, and not necessarily what God has said is love and is right. So as you're seeking those opposing voices, don't allow your anchor to be uprooted from where God has you planted.
Oh yeah, and that's why I won't say the name of the podcast, but yeah, because I don't agree with any of their answers to the problems that they bring up. But I do agree that a lot of it is a problem, and it makes me think. But take it with a grain of salt. That's
So, Dave, what do you think we would see change in the church if everyone started breaking these echo chambers, or even outside of the church, if you're just listening to see what these silly church folk are talking about?
I think that we would all start to realize that it's okay to hear other perspectives and still remain the same. Because if your belief is truly rooted in truth, you could hear other perspectives without changing. And I think that there's a fear of change or a fear of argument or not being able to say the right thing to defend your faith. I think we eliminate all those fears because now we're shedding light on the problem and on the division. And Satan is a lot like a cockroach. As soon as you turn the light on, he's going to run for cover. So if we could get through those man-made walls to realize that it's okay to disagree. Just like when my wife and I can't decide on what for dinner, our disagreement is not at all rooted in hatred or bigotry or selfishness. It's preference, it's belief, it's idea. So we eliminate that lie that disagreement is the equivalent to hate. We also start to see that, maybe if I'm a Republican and I talk to a Democratic Christian, we start to realize that we have a lot more in common than Facebook and the media will have us believe. So suddenly, these walls are coming down and we can be together. And just think about it this way. The Bible and Christ, they taught us about living in unity, not conformity.
Mm-hmm.
And a Democratic Christian can reach different people a different way than a Republican Christian could. And God can still use each side of the aisle as long as Jesus is number one. And we also stop trying to see each other as the enemy, because the Bible is very clear. Our enemy is not the Republicans, the Democrats, conservatives, liberals, or the libertarians. Our enemy is not even flesh and blood. So by being in that place where we can talk and disagree and still be in a relationship, all these lies start falling apart, and there's even less possible there to divide us.
Yeah. Of course, what he's saying does not apply if we're talking about Star Wars Revenge of the Sith.
Yes,
you
it
can't
does.
disagree about that. If you don't like the prequel, fine.
Yeah,
no, me and TJ have very different opinions about the prequel.
I'll drive to your house and I'll end you. But anyway.
Yeah.
But in a good Christian way.
Yeah, he'll end me in a good Christian. Oh.
I'll repent. But the last thing we like to do on our show before the outro, we like to give our God moment segment. We just like to talk about a moment in our lives recently where, you know, we saw God, whether it be a moment of worship or a blessing or a challenge, anything, anywhere, anyhow. I always like to make Josh go first to give everyone else more time. So, Josh, do you have a God moment for us?
Yeah, it's a weird one. Technically, I can't be telling you guys this, but this isn't going to be published until after I'm allowed to say something about it, so I don't think it matters. I work for Shutterfly. They're giving a company-wide raise kind of deal, so super cool. But they have not told us what it is going to be, and everybody's acting like it's a really big deal. Those over us who do know act like it's a huge deal, and I'm like, man, I'm like simultaneously feel blessed and challenged. Like I'm blessed because I know it's going to be good, but I'm also challenged because I'm like, man, my brain immediately goes to, man, it's probably going to be like 10 cents. So I'm challenged to not be so negative and also learn a little bit of patience because I don't want to wait until whenever to figure out what it's going to be. But right. Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's going to be a Jelly of the Month Club membership.
I would like that better than a 10-cent raise. Shutterfly, if you're listening.
Chipotle actually just did company-wide raises, so it's been pretty nice. I can't lie. But
nice.
It's not my God moment. But my God moment of this week is a good friend of mine is coming into town today, the day of recording this. And until recently, it had been a couple years until we got to hang out. And we got to hang out for about a week. And in those 2 years, he had gotten an entire family. So gonna go get dinner with him tonight and meet his wife and his 3 children for the first time. So that's going to be pretty great. Thankful for that. So Dave, do you have a God moment for us?
Yeah. A week ago, from the time that we're recording this, I was a counselor at Royal Family Kids Camp. It's a camp for orphan kids. My wife and I, we've been married 6 years and a month as we're recording, and we've wanted children. And I always thought that I could handle having boys, but I do not want girls. I absolutely don't want any of our kids to be girls. But this last week, during this camp with these foster kids, there's a girl there, and we just had a connection, and just getting to know her and be one of the counselors that worked with her off and on during the week. It was a God moment that changed my heart, where I'm like, I could actually be a girl dad. I think I could do this. I don't think it's going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination and things like that. But it was like a God moment saying, Dave, you can be a girl dad. God has faith in me to do that. Because he built me and he knows. But for me, that was a God moment. And I think me voicing that revelation was a God moment for my wife, because now she's like, okay, awesome. You're not going to be scared to death and crying in the corner when the ultrasound comes back with the females.
Right. You're going to have female triplets, unfortunately.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. Why would
you realize how many people have prophesied that we would have multiples? So you're probably not wrong.
I call them as I see them. I just
Yeah, that sounds expensive.
yeah, but
but a blessing.
yeah, it's always good to hear someone's heart changed for the better, or at least more inclusive. Better is subjective, but
yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today, Dave. We have one more segment for you after the outro, so if you'll stick around, that would be great.
Sure.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or an enemy. Share it with your cousins, even, who are neither. And appreciate your time today.
My cousins are my friends.
Nope, cousins.
If you're listening, you're my friends. They really are, though. Hey, Dave, where can people find you and follow Gifts for Glory?
We're on us all, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Gifts, the number 4 Glory, Gifts for Glory, and you can connect with me directly at Real Dave Ebert.
Awesome. So some future guests, we have return guests, Dr. Peter Beck and Pete Link. The Petes are coming back. Dr. John Soden, co-author of In the Beginning, ellipses, We Misunderstood. Best-selling author Frank Viola will be joining us to talk about his new book, Hang On, Let Go, What to Do When Your Dreams Are Shattered and Life is Falling Apart. That is a title. And, of course, at the end of Season 1, we will have Francis Chan.
Wow. He doesn't know, though.
I hope he doesn't.
He'll figure it out.
Yeah, if he knows, then he's declined, which would make us be in Season 1 forever. So,
well, I just keep asking him until he says yeah. It's fine. What's that story that Jesus tells about the lady going to the judge? She just annoyed him into saying yeah.
Right.
It'll work.
So, thank you so much for listening today. We've so enjoyed you being here, and tune in next week.
Do.
Bob. Nice.